Americans owe 1.68 trillion in car loans, more than credit card debt, and as much as all federal student loans. Cool. Yeah, pretty much the only way the car industry could keep, existing. You can't really that we when we moved into a pure debtors economy, this was pretty much inevitable. You're meant to spend your entire life in debt. It's student loans, medical debt, your mortgage if you can afford a house, and your car payments, Everything fucking doesn't matter the APR. You're gonna be in that shit for 20 years. 20 years. They're trying to put forward 50-year mortgages? Motherfucker, you're going to be dead before you pay that off. Klarna debt for the Taco Bell. Yeah, I mean, you begin to understand income inequality and wealth inequality for what it actually is, which is not a material distribution of wealth, but rather an abstract way of reifying class imbalance. And to that end, it doesn't really matter how much money the working class has or has access to or can make. What matters is keeping them in a permanent state of economic servility. You know? You will never, from a conventional wagey job, the whole point of the system is to tighten the strings in the right places so that you're always just on the brink. And you can escape it, and that's the key. That's how they keep you in, right? You could become an OnlyFans model or a live streamer or get lucky on the poly market or whatever. The knowledge that it's technically possible to escape the cycle means that people are less likely to, believe it's fundamentally broken, right? Hunger Games shit. Vosh is an OnlyFans model, really? What I do is nowhere near as difficult or dignified as OnlyFans models, though I do keep my asshole waxed, just in case. I don't, that's a lie. I thought it'd be funny to say, though. It's the end result of years of rising prices for cars, an item that has fast outpaced inflation since the pandemic. In a country as car-reliant as the U.S., expensive cars and auto debt have quickly spiraled into one of the largest monthly obligations in household budgets. It genuinely makes me wonder if the only reason TVs were allowed to get less expensive was because of the rise of the computer. Like, if the computer was never invented and the TV was still the primary information distribution stream in households, would every new line of TVs have been reinvented with more and more expensive underlying technology so that it was impossible to get lower cost ones, Right now, the computer's skyrocketing in price. Sometimes it makes me wonder if the obsolescence of the TV, not obsolescence, but the relegation of the TV to a less important role in the households, the only reason why it was allowed to get so expensive, so inexpensive, so quickly. Yeah, it's not as mandatory, more elastic, but everyone needs a smartphone. Everyone needs a computer. Everyone needs a car. Which, to my mind, is the only reason why you can't go out there and find like a $15,000 car from any dealership. Because, we all know they could make them. We know they could. I know that car safety and emission standards have gone up over time. I understand that. But, if they wanted to, they could make a car that's functional and gets the job done. And it wouldn't be that expensive. We know this because it's available in other countries. It's just in America. A Citibank report in 2006 said inequality would continue to rise for as long as enough people believe they can become a part of those who benefit from it. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, it's Hunger Games shit, right? You roll a lottery. Very not good. Again, I just don't think that debt should exist as a concept. Grants should exist. Interest definitely shouldn't exist, as it should be illegal. Any kind of interest. Pardon me for my biblical position on this. But I think you should go a step further. Just not allow debt. Obviously, interpersonal debt, like a friend loans you $5, you pay them back. The state's not going to intervene in that. But structurally, debt should not be able to be legally called upon. It shouldn't be possible to enforce debt. If a company gives you $10,000 and tells you to pay it back, and later you're like, I don't think I will, the company shouldn't be able to get that money back from you. They just shouldn't have given it to you. There shouldn't be debt. I truly believe, and it's an extreme position, and it would require some fundamental restructuring of how society works. But I think it's necessary. I really do. That was 4 consecutive whatabouts. Are you fucking kidding me? Come on. What about individual? What about individuals? What about national? What about national? What question? Ask your question. National debt is different. Selling treasury bonds is different. I'm talking about interpersonal debt. I'm talking about debt owned by people and companies. National debt is different because the debt is supported by the existence of a Federal Reserve. You have a monetary policy to think of. Works differently. Why should bonds exist? Don't test me. Because national debt can be used to form codependency and interdependency between institutions and countries, which is beneficial for securing trust in the viability of a currency, which is necessary for the currency to be trusted nationally and internationally, which is necessary for modern finance. You can maintain it without having the deleterious effects that you get from privately held debt. Modern finance is good. National debt is potentially good. Could you take the common debt that each nation owes each other and cancel out the overlap? No, it does not work that way. You also want debt on a national level because other countries need to maintain a reserve of your currency. How could Japan ever have any US dollars unless they had at some point obtained them by buying something from the US government? You need to get that money from somewhere. It's not like Japan's going to bolster their reserve USD by like taxing the dollars held by their citizens. The dollars, not the yen, you know? You do need reserves of other currencies in your coffers. It helps facilitate international finance, which is good if you, like me, like buying shiny things from Japan. Damn, this makes no sense to me. That's okay. It makes sense to very few people, including me. Maybe naive, but couldn't you just exchange currency? How could Japan, if you were in Japan and you wanted to buy something that is purchased in USD, like from an American company, how would you get USD from a currency exchange without the Japanese government having USD for you to obtain? Or if you were a Japanese citizen in America and wanted to buy something, how could you exchange your yen for USD unless the government was willing to hold a reserve of yen that could be used to exchange with USD? Sure, private companies facilitate currency exchanges, but then where do they get it from, right? You need a reserve in these countries. Bitcoin? No. Wouldn't it be better if central banks would guarantee fixed exchange rates? I'm not sure what you mean. A fixed exchange rate could be You want a fixed exchange rate with like the Argentinian peso, and then the Fed for Argentina prints 1 bajillion of their dollars, and then Argentinian citizens buy up the entire U.S. economy? No, you do not want fixed exchange rates. Unfortunately, the global economy is and always will be very, very complicated, but in the meantime, there are things we can do to mitigate the effect of the complications on the average person, and one of the things that we could do is finally outlaw debt and usury. God willing. What if we had like one global Federal Reserve? I know you're just memeing because you're a big memeler. Puzzler22, you're like a little Riddler in chat. But it is worth noting that if we had one single global currency, that shit would feel so fucking good if you were at the heart of the imperial core over here in America, and that shit would feel so fucking bad if you were in Bangladesh. That shit would fucking suck if you were in Bangladesh. The whole world trading on commodities in a single currency means that the price of your shit that you rely on would be affected by the purchasing power of the hyper-wealthy people abroad. Think of it kind of like the oil market, you know? Because oil is a global commodity, usually paid for in US petrodollars, that means that the price in America and the price in Bangladesh is usually about the same, which fucking sucks for them, because we've got lots of money and they don't. Okay, but what if this scenario is in the future and the cost of labor and goods is the exact same in those places? Dog, what if I had pants that jerked my shit fucking raw while I walked around town? Like I'm walking and my legs are moving the pistons and it's straight up jerking me the whole time. That'd be sick. No kidding, right? You're onto something with this one. Anyway, yeah, no, having a single global currency means that the price of commodities in poorer countries would be weighted by the purchasing power of individuals in, wealthier countries, which means that you already see this, by the way. We have smaller versions of this in America. Poorer areas in America pay way the fuck more for certain basic necessities relative to the general cost of living than people in wealthier areas. Like, if you live in New York City or Seattle or Los Angeles, the average income in those areas means that usually you only have to pay a very small portion of your income on groceries. Like, the cost of groceries in Seattle is not that different to the cost of groceries in the poorest areas of West Virginia. They're pretty similar. You're paying for it with the same damn currency, but the average income in Seattle is like 3 or 4 times higher than it would be in a poor area of West Virginia, probably more than 4 times higher. So you're already suffering from the consequence of a kind of, you know, imparity there with regards to purchasing power, which is one of the reasons why it's so important to decommodify things. Because if you give everyone just like a flat amount of money with which to buy necessities, you end up with these really weird schisms where like a flat amount can be really beneficial to people in a poorer area, and it can mean like nothing. Like if you're poor but you live in New York City, it might not mean that much. Like even putting forward like the full extent of your SNAP benefits or whatever. Um, Germany versus Greece. This is the issue that Greece had. Yeah, same euro, but because it's all the same currency, Greece didn't have the ability to engage in monetary policy that benefited them specifically. I thought that was a good summary of the thing. This is ridiculous. You can't have a capitalist economy without debt. No! Fuck! I guess we'll have to do away with capitalism. You actually can, by the way. Like you can actually maintain that not that I want to, but you can maintain strong market principles and a fundamentally capitalist economy while eliminating the concept of debt. You just have to finance you have to obtain capital without speculative finance, you know, without investment. Or you can have laws that that treat speculative investment differently. Like you get dividends up until a point, but it would work differently. You know, you could have colonialism. No, that's just a totally different word from what we're talking about. That's just a whole different word. Strong market principles without speculative investment. How? You wait, you do realize that like capitalism exists without the stock market, right? Like the fundamental elements of the market economy where people make money and then they spend that money at local stores and use the power of their wallet to allocate resources in accordance with their needs and preferences, and then those companies take home the money and they use it to reinvest and expand. All of that works without speculation. Speculation is an added element that turns Wall Street into a fucking roulette slash casino that wealthy people use to fuck children and finance the additional fucking of children. Vasha was a past period of capitalism. I mean, yeah, removing it would mean it would come back eventually. I'm not I don't know I'm not a capitalist. Like, I agree that if you maintain the existence of capital, eventually capitalists will worm their way into government and reintroduce laws that benefit them. I'm just saying that I don't like that. I want to go further than just eliminating debt as a concept, to be clear. I'm just saying that I think that this is something that could be pushed for, well, not like practically in the world today, but it's something that I'd like to see. But does capitalism exist without speculative investment? Yes! Isn't that what the capital and capitalism means? No. Capital is just money that you reinvest into the acquisition and maintenance of the means of production. It doesn't have to be speculative. No debt needs to be involved. If a bunch of people in an area like a restaurant and give it a bunch of money when they go and buy there, they reinvest that money into like opening a second location. That's capital they're using there. It's just not speculative. There's no debt involved, at least not necessarily. Any big project requires debt, though. Not as much as you might think. Nowadays it does, because companies leverage debt positively. They use it to push back their tax obligations. They use it to leverage their wealth without touching their principal. They use it to avoid having to sell off shares. But like, you could absolutely design a market economy where you confront, for basically every project, you could front the initial investment. And then where you can't, we just have to think of ways to subsidize it without needing debt. Like, for instance, the federal government subsidizing the R&D cost of pharmaceutical development, which to an extent they already do, to a large extent, you know. In that case, you could do that via grants, which again, like, this already happens. This means only people with pre-existing wealth will be able to create investments. Are you suggesting that any random person without wealth today can just create a company by what? Going to the bank and getting a loan of 5 million or something? I disagree with your logic. I just do. The idea that debt, the existence of debt, makes the market more equal is just not true. There aren't enough grants? Well, yeah, not now. Like, the existence of debt right now has been used to leverage the existing wealth of the oligarchs and build an economy where more and more of the wealth is being siphoned into the hands of an incredibly small number of people. Debt is the mechanism the wealthy use to maintain this imbalance. through speculative investment and leveraging loans off of existing wealth rather than having to cash in their shares, they're able to build more and more and more and more and more and more and more wealth. If things ever crash, they usually don't even have to pay the cost of their debt. They just acquire more and more and more and more. It's not good. It's not sustainable. How would people launch a business without taking a loan or already having money? I mean, right now, today, lots of people start businesses by saving up money and then renting a place and licensing the business and then starting. Like, lots of people start businesses without needing a loan. How big of a business are we talking here? Also, I said earlier that there are ways to raise capital that might involve the acquisition of wealth that's paid out in ways that don't work the same as a traditional loan. Like, say, for example, dividends up into a certain point. Maybe like you receive dividends from the revenue of a business that you invest in up until your initial investment plus a certain percentage is met. That way, you have a logic for loan or for indebtedment that doesn't have the same legal obligations as traditional indebtedment. You know, you wouldn't be able to call bankruptcy. Oh, like interest? I mean, interest in a certain sense, but not exactly the same. The mechanism for what I'm describing wouldn't work the same exactly as being able to call someone on their debt. What would a person do when he's in need of money? I don't understand. What in a system where loans don't exist, what would they need money for? Fen? Fair point. You'd be okay with loans that aren't structured in a way we structure them today? Well, not really, because it wouldn't be the same as debt. I guess it'd be a loan without debt, because getting a guaranteed upper cap of dividends isn't quite the same as being to call someone on debt. A loan without debt is just a grant. No, because if the loan comes attached with a promise of a certain cap of dividend, guys, legitimately, what are we talking about right now? I'm being so fucking for real right now. What the fuck are we talking about? That's stock? No! If we replace debt with grants, this would lead to an unimaginable amount of government spending. I legitimately don't think you know enough about the topic to even know what I'm proposing. Like you're locked in a kind of hyper-specific capitalist realism where you think that the only way to build, like, the world right now has an unfathomable amount of total debt. And if you went back 100 years, it didn't. The amount of debt in total has skyrocketed because we have built a system that ensures permanent indebtedness from every person and institution. It's basically the way things are built deliberately. It's a debtor's economy. And what you're thinking is like, well, we would need to replace all that debt with grants. Like, no, we used to have an economy that wasn't built like that. It didn't used to be. If you went back 200 years, 300, 400, you could maintain the basic elements of market transactions within an economy, not capitalism because it was, a mercantile system, but you maintain the elements we're talking about preserving, which is the, maintenance of one's life, financial transactions, opening businesses. You could do that without, the average global debt being like greater than humanity's GDP. You can build these structures in a way that doesn't force permanent indebtedness. Now, what I am describing is a impossibly widespread systemic change, but it is something that I think is worth thinking about. What would a world without debt look like? Don't we have more total global debt than global GDP? Yeah, hold on. Global GDP, what's the ratio at now? About 120 trillion. Global debt. About 350 trillion. Okay, so we have more than double the total global debt than GDP, which is probably not great. How? Because this was the way to ensure permanent servility from the working class after industry developed to the point that you could meet people's fundamental needs. It used to be you just could not clothe and feed and house everyone reliably because humanity just wasn't that efficient at producing things. Now we are. So how do we maintain servility? What prevents the working class from developing, autonomy? How do we keep y'all stressed? Well, you do it by building a debtor's economy. Curiously, this really ramped up, really recently. There's probably a million different ways that you can analyze this, but you can't argue to me that the amount of global debt there is right now is sustainable or rational when a lot of it is a byproduct of the post-Reagan American economy. You know what I mean? Like the IMF, the World Bank, and the Western world have worked to build systems that make it like this. It's not innately like this. Isn't that what they did to Walgreens? I don't know, man. compared to global GDP. Trying to find a good chart for that. Can't really find a good, like, 2-point chart on that. If anyone could find it, that'd be nice. Just not seeing it. I really don't think, Valtarth, you need business debt in order to build an economy. I just don't. I really don't. And I think that to the extent that you need loans, you could structure them in such a way as to provide the capital without necessarily indebting these companies. It just seems like debt as a legal and financial instrument is a tool that, if left untouched for long enough, just ends the world. You know what I mean? It seems like it's a devil's bargain where it allows you to allocate resources in a very particular and very effective way, and then eventually the world ends. And I think we're kind of past the fucking around point, and we're in the find out section now, I think, in my opinion. Here's debt scaled against global GDP. That's a much more useful chart, where it's more than doubled over the past 70 years. This is much more useful than this chart because this one's not scaled against GDP. Private debt, household debt, public debt. Look at how much household debt has gone up. That's fucking crazy. Look at that. Household debt basically didn't exist because people didn't have credit cards until like the 1960s. You know, private debt has more or less doubled, in large part because of it's now financially beneficial to leverage debt for both tax and like investment reasons. Public debt it has kind of like an hourglass thing going on here, because back in these days, a lot of the public debt was post World War II. You know, it was paying off the debt of war. Except back in those days, we were maintaining those debt levels because of, World War II. What the fuck is public debt being built off of now? What? Look around you. What is being built that justifies having a higher level of average public debt than we incurred during the Second World War? What would you do about existing debt? I'd pin it all on that guy in chat who keeps arguing with me. Is Zerizer? And I'd just let them deal with it. Sort of like a Christ-like figure. Massive consumption increase. Increases in public consumption should not be increasing public debt like this. And there's absolutely no reason why things like Social Security, healthcare, and what have you should be ballooning public debt in the way that it is right now, considering how much more efficiently we are able to procure and offer healthcare and basic, services and necessities. Like, I know it's crazy to think of, but like on average, healthcare, food, housing, these things should all be more accessible now than they were before. We literally can make things easier now. The fertilizer is better. We farm far more food than we ever have. Everything is easier to make now. Healthcare has advanced enormously in the past 100 years. Then who pays the pedophiles? That's a good point. But there aren't more doctors? Yeah, because they artificially limit the number of doctors to keep the service scarce. The reason healthcare costs have increased has nothing to do with the cost of the products that doctors use on you or the wages doctors receive. It has everything to do with the salaries of the bloated middlemen and administrative workers who work in healthcare and health insurance. Like, without exaggeration, of the increase in hospital costs that one might have occurred from the 1950s to now, essentially all of it has just gone to feeding the middlemen, lining the pockets of, dozens of administrators who preside over every transaction. It's almost like there's a problem with the market system. What? You got... Why are you acting like I like capitalism? Why are you so... Why is everyone so aggro? All you're doing is arguing with me. You're acting as though I'm trying to defend the institution. Why do you want to fight? I have no enemies. Go away. Whoosh. Like, every message here is just like bitter, spiteful, like, oh, have you thought of it? But they like agree with me? I don't get it. I don't know why people are like that. Real question, why ban him? For one, it was a mute. For two, being antisocial is bad online, not just in person. If a person was acting like that to me in person, I would find them very unpleasant, and I would not want to talk to them, and it's my website. So if a person's going to act like that to me insistently after a 30-minute conversation on monetary policy, even after I engage and respond and like explain my position over and over, and they're still going to act like that. People, you can't be antisocial. You can't. To your credit, you've responded and engaged, which is a show of respect. Disrespect would just be ignoring it if a person had a criticism. Engagement should, if anything, soften the person I'm engaging with, because they understand that I'm receiving what they're saying and I'm willing to grapple with it, you know? But if you just maintain the spiteful tone, I don't understand it. It's just not social. It's not good. It's not good.